Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be continuing the '07 Yamaha R6 build project. Where we left off on last episode was taking apart the engine. What I ended up finding out with the engine was that the head is no good. I met a great person at a fantastic machine shop. He was able to take some of the caps off these things, and you can kind of see the damage with it. So we are on search for a new head. That said, I will find one. However, until that happens, we need to continue to disassemble this bike here. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to take off the tail section. First the plastics, some of the wiring, and then we're going to get the whole tail section off. After that's done, we're going to continue with the wire harness, taking it all off, and getting these pieces and parts separated so we can start building the new frame. So let's go ahead and move forward. Alright, so step one of this is going to be getting off this back seat. Downside is I don't have the key to get it off because the bike didn't come with a key. Now, one way to do that is get a hold of this little lever switch right here. So what I need to do is I need to get a screwdriver down inside there, push back on it, and this thing should pop off. So let's go ahead and try that. Easy as that. Done. There it is. Now, looks like a factory toolkit. Yeah, factory toolkit. Don't need that. We need to start looking to get some of these plastics. We've got some push pins here that we'll take out. Looks like some of the screws are already missing, so that'll help us there. On the lower side, what do we got here? We got screws here, here, 4 bolts there. I don't know if those have to come out or not. 4 nuts. A couple back here. Let's go ahead and pull those real quick and get this thing off. Okay, so all those bolts and small clips are out now. If you're new to the channel, something we like to do is we like to label everything when we take it apart. Typically motorcycles aren't that bad like a car, but it does make life a lot easier when you put things back together. Even though we probably won't be using this hardware, we'll be using probably anodized like gold hardware maybe, or depending on the color we choose. But it does make life a little bit easier, so just kind of an FYI there. Now that we have all the clips out, we just got to lift the edges up here. Looks like that one's broken, and there's our upper tail fairing. So let's go ahead and set that to the side. Now we got to focus on the lower. So the lower appears to be loose, but something is still held on. It looks like it's right here around the taillight somewhere. I see. This must be where the 4 bolts underneath are coming in play. So let me go ahead and pull those off real quick and see if I can drop this down. Okay, 4 10mm lower bolts are off, and now it's loose. The only last things holding this thing on are going to be the latch right here, which is going to pop off. We'll pull this out, and then there is a wire connector right down there for the taillight, and this whole thing should pull off. So let's go ahead and get that off. Alright, both those are disconnected. Let's see if this thing pulls off now. I want to be careful that we get this around this edge here. Actually, it looks like I think these rear pegs have to come off. Yeah, it's all the way around it. We're gonna have to take those 4 bolts out. Not a big deal. It's probably like a maybe a T24. Let me see what it is real quick. All right, guys. So it looks like it is actually a number 6, which I think stands for 6mm hex end. So one side off. Other side off. The bolts out of the way here. Let's go ahead and pull that thing out. Alright, there's our lower free. So the next step from here, we are going to go ahead and again get the battery out and some of the wiring loose and freed from the subframe. And then we'll start pulling bolts out of the subframe. The subframe is pretty typically easy once you get the wiring out of it, which should be really relatively easy itself. We got 4 bolts, 2 on each side. This whole piece will just come right off. We won't even have to touch it. So that's probably not need to get painted. It probably has to be cleaned up a little bit, but not much work to that. So let's move forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward and start taking some of this out. There is the battery. Let's move out the main ECU. Let's pull our wiring through. It looks like we've got a wire connector right here that we need to take out of some sort. There it is. See that? Now we're pulling it all back out of the way. We've got another wire connector down in here. Looks like some sort of relay. There it is. That's out of the way. We do have the zip tie connector right here. We can take out, and one right here can also be moved. There is that. Now we do have a couple connectors on our rear brake assembly. It's probably for the brake light. I don't know what else, so I gotta go ahead and go to the other side and remove those real quick. Let me show you what they look like. See the wires coming down in here? And they run basically down in here. And like I said, it looks like it's down in here behind the brakes. So let me go ahead and disconnect those. It might even be a kickstand safety wire. But let me go ahead and pull those out. We'll move forward. All right, guys, so we figured out what it was. Yes, one probably goes to the brake wire, and you'll have to take an 8mm bolt out right here to relieve all that. But oxygen sensor as well as the exhaust servo unit, which is mounted right there. Now, I don't know if I can bypass that since it was removed. Typically, when you do that, and the ECU doesn't realize the sensor or the box is there, it'll give you some kind of weird check engine light or problematic light. So I have to do some research on that. But we are definitely, without a doubt, taking apart or getting rid of these cables because they're not needed. So let's go ahead and pull that off, pull the subframe off. All right, guys, so just to recap, I went ahead and took out that whole servo box or whatever it's called. Here it is right here. I'm going to set that aside. The only thing we have left to do to get this subframe off is get a small hex bolt to take the rear master cylinder off, and then those 4 T45 hex bits or bolts that are going to go ahead and pull this whole subframe off. So let's go ahead and move forward and get those out. All right, and for the last two, let's pull those real quick. All right, you can see it's loose. Set these bolts to the side in our bag, and there it is. So there is the subframe off. Now, it's time to move forward and continue pulling some of this wiring. Not for nothing, it actually looks kind of cool without the tail section on it. It looks like one of those custom bobbers, but mixed with an R6. That's actually pretty cool. I wonder if anybody's ever done that with full fairings. That'd be kind of neat. I don't think we're doing that, though. All right, let's move forward. Okay, so what's left of wiring to get off? Let's go ahead and look. So I got a zip tie to cut there. Looks like we got wiring stuck to this bracket here that's got to come off. Let's throw that out of the way. Couple plugs here. Running down underneath forward to this. And probably, I'm guessing, to the key, wherever the heck that thing's laying at. Let's go ahead and disconnect those and see if we can pull this thing off real quick. Okay, so there is the harness. Let's go ahead and pick it up. Man, that's a heck of a harness for a bike. I can't imagine what the new ones must be like with the ABS and all that. That's a heck of a harness for a motorcycle. Anyhow, there it is with no harness. So, good news, everything's going smooth. Pretty simple. Next move, well, I guess we're going to pull off maybe we'll pull off the handlebars and grips and all that. And then start moving towards the triple tree. Maybe I can go ahead and jack it up from the center there and put my rear brace to holding by the spools in the back. And at that point, once we get the triple trees off, we can start pulling the back wheel, swing arm, and all that. So let's go ahead and move forward. All right, so for the front clip-ons, those will have to come off when we take off the triple tree. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Anyways, to get the grips and everything off, we got some Phillips screws here. We have an 8mm bolt here. This whole thing, that might have to be taken out too because it's probably tightened in there holding this thing on. We'll pull that off. Same with the other side. There's probably a couple bolts on the bottom side of the kill switch, an 8mm bolt on the front brake, and then this end piece here. We'll get those out. Okay guys, so everything's loose right now. Just gotta get off the grip. A little old school trick from the BMX days. Take a kind of a thin flathead screwdriver. It's kind of hard to do this with one hand. You want to wiggle it all the way up as far as you can, just like that. We want to take some basic window cleaner, kind of angled up there, spray it in there, pull the screwdriver out, twist it off. Really easy. And it leaves a non-greasy residue, so I learned that when I was about 6 years old riding bikes. So anyways, this should all pull off now. It's got a zip tie, it's got to hold it on, I got to take it off. But basically I should be able to pull all this stuff off. On the other side, we do have to remove the lower brake line, or the upper brake line, from the bottom of the brake lever. So let's go ahead and do that as well and get that side pulled off. Okay, that's all off. For the record, don't try to yank your kill switch off. It is notched, and what I mean by that is, see that little notch, a little nub sticking right there? That actually sits inside this hole, and the reason for that is so this thing doesn't spin on you when you're flipping your switch up and down. So don't try to yank that off. You have to take these screws out almost all the way to get that thing to separate and slide off. So there is the front controls off. So let's take off the horn, and I think that's pretty much it. Maybe the rear hugger. We're going to start pulling things apart though. Let's go ahead and move forward. Okay guys, so it's time to get this thing basically level and straight and holding itself up, and by that we're going to be using this guy here is used for rear spools. I haven't used this since ages ago with my R1. You can kind of see how dirty the thing is. It hasn't been used probably, I don't know, it's been a lot of years. But we got to move this thing forward. But man, look how sketchy this thing is. When I grab this thing, I can't even begin to explain to you when I try to move this thing. Like, I don't know if you can even tell. It's like super sketchy. So fortunately it doesn't weigh much anymore because it doesn't have a motor on it. But again, I'm going to put the rear stand on the spools. And again, I'm going to try to put a jack in the center right here to hold it so I can get the bars up and off. So let's go ahead and move forward and do that. Alright guys, so there you guys can see it in ultra wide view. The rear stand is holding up, and I have the jack stand in the middle as I said. Just barely holding it, just enough so we can kind of get this off. So what we'll be focusing on is getting out the rear hugger, the rear sets, maybe disconnecting the shock from the back, getting the back tire undone, and somehow or another getting all these off. But you can see, I mean, there is just parts absolutely just everywhere. I mean, there's parts I can't even it's crazy how much, when you take apart a bike, how many parts there are. Don't kill me because the shop being a mess. I know it's a mess, but I've only got so much room with cars and everything else in the way. So anyhow, here it is. Let's go ahead and pull some more parts off. Alright guys, so it is the next day, and in efforts to try to speed this process up so you don't have to see every little bolt, I am going to take off multiple pieces in one shot here. I'm just going to tell you what I'm going to do with it, and how I'm going to get it off, and then we'll move forward from there. But for now, we're going to take these 3 bolts off to get the rear hugger off. I'm going to take the bolts out down here to get the rear sets off on both sides. I am going to take the chain guard off. I am going to loosen the rear wheel. I am going to take the front brake assembly off, as well as the horn. And then we're going to start moving down to the actual brakes themselves on both sides. So let me go ahead and get those off real quick, and we'll show you where we're at then. Okay guys, a quick update. I got a lot of the stuff off. I was trying to get off the kickstand, and one of the bolts just won't come out and stripped. It's a Allen head. I don't know what size, maybe 3mm or something, but anyhow, it won't come out. So what I've decided to do, I'm going to go ahead and just completely take off the swing arm and the triple tree, so I can just flip it upside down and kind of grind it out because it's kind of hard to get to. But just wanted to show you taking these things off. Normally these things pop right off. You kind of wiggle them off one at a time. Well, not one at a time, but back and forth. Because they're bent, it's not wanting to come out. So what I have to do is take off this main bolt here. I've loosened all the lower bolts. Got the clip-ons loose, and then the upper bolt. And what I'll do is I'll pop this off and I'll slide this up to try to release these two. And then I can wiggle them out of the bottom. So that's about the only way, next to unbolting the main axle going through the front wheel, so which I may still have to do. But I'm going to go ahead and do that and get that separated. Just want to give you an update. Guys, again, a quick update. Before I finish splitting the frame from the swing arm, since we have the wheel off already and the forks off, the triple tree separated, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start taking out the brakes and disassembling this front wheel so I can toss it in the trash. But just so you know, in taking off the front triple tree, it's pretty easy. Like I said, once you have bolted everything, you get the top layer off, you're going to bump the top off, and then you're going to see these two, I don't know what kind of nuts there. It's kind of like a spanner wrench type nut. Now, I didn't have the actual spanner wrench. I just used a pipe wrench, and it was pretty easy, so it didn't tear nothing up. But what you'll see is you'll slide the, this actually sits up here, but the bearings, slide the bearings and stuff off, and the cap, or race, I guess you would call it. And then this whole thing is going to slide down out of the neck of that, and in which you'll have one whole unit here. Then since you already had these bolts loose, you're just going to tap this and slide this whole unit off. Now I got it put back together. just so I don't lose anything. Obviously, this is the destroyed fork here. We got another one there that's slightly bent. It's probably worth something on eBay, I'm sure, to somebody. I'm sure the internals are probably okay on it. It's just the outer tube. So we'll save some of the parts that are potentially useful to somebody. If anybody has use for them, definitely comment below. But again, we're going to take the fender off that's getting tossed. We're going to take the calipers and the rotors off. I think those are still okay. Hopefully those are straight, at least rotor-wise. And again, we're going to toss the wheel. So let's go ahead and get that done before we move back to the frame. Okay, and so here we are. Frame is flipped upside down. You can see the problem belt. So I got to cut that off, take that off. I'm going to have to take the back wheel off, which should be fairly straightforward, just pulling out the main axle nuts. The only part that I think I'm going to have a problem with is going to be this spanner socket, or whatever those are called. I don't know if I'll be lucky to be able to take off the socket on the other side and it'll slide out this way, or if I'll have to get the special tool to separate that. Obviously I have to take apart the bolts for the shock as well, but that'll pretty much be a full disassembly, as the rear brake will come off with the wheel. So let's move forward and see what we can do as far as getting this thing off. Alright, so as I expected, I got this nut off over here. Pretty straightforward, and I try to tap on it and it doesn't slide out, which means it's threaded somehow or another on the other side. I went ahead and looked up the Yamaha parts diagram. In that diagram it does show me that the spanner nut tool thing goes over top of this, and this threads into the frame itself, it looks to be. But from what I can tell, that spanner nut shouldn't have to be loosened. And again, I use the word spanner nut, I don't really know what it's called, but whatever. So, of course, this is a 24mm hex. I don't have one, but what I do have is a nut and bolt that fit perfect. So what I did was I went ahead and welded it. I don't know if I put enough weld on it, we're going to test it. But basically it slides in there, and I'm going to use a 24mm socket, and I'm going to try to impact that thing out. So again, this is a DIY channel, so I'm not falling into the $50 tool deal. I know I can get it out. If I can't, I'll buy it, but I feel pretty confident that this will come out. So let me go ahead and try to get this thing out real quick. Okay, so just as I suspected, I just had to loosen it with a breaker bar, and it's spinning out. You can kind of see it loosening up here, so that's good news. So I'm gonna go ahead and separate this and pull this thing out. Then all I have left to do is basically take the back wheel off the swing arm, and that'll be it. Alright guys, so that is a wrap for the disassembly of the broken R6. It is ridiculous how many parts are just spread out across the floor, and just everywhere. It's nuts. There's just parts and parts and parts and parts. So anyhow, it's all taken apart. Only issue I'm having right now is I ordered a bunch of parts, and then there's a bunch of parts that aren't available. It has something to do with global trading or whatever. A lot of those things come from China, and for whatever reason, none of them are available right now. But I did order a bunch of anodized little trinkets to make it look cooler. I did order the new frame, which you know that I have that. We're going to have a video where I repair the tank and do some bodywork repair, and we'll also have a painting video as well. But those videos might take a little bit of time to come out, so don't get mad at me. Like I said, I'm just waiting on some stuff to come in. In regards to the Viper project, the Viper is done with the exception of one thing. I have a leak in the radiator, so I am waiting to fix that, and then we're going to the tuner. So that'll make a wrap on the Viper video as well. That said, like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you guys have any questions, again, please feel free to comment below what your thoughts are, comments for paint colors, maybe accessories, whatnot. And I appreciate you stopping out and watching the video. Join back soon, and we will talk with you soon.